Search and rescue is the search for and provision of aid to people who are in distress or imminent danger. The general field of search and rescue includes many specialty subfields, typically determined by the type of terrain the search is conducted over. These include mountain rescue, ground search and rescue, including the use of search and rescue dogs, urban search and rescue in cities, combat search and rescue on the battlefield, and air-sea rescue over water. International Search and Rescue Advisory Group is a UN organization that promotes the exchange of information between national urban search and rescue organizations. The duty to render assistance is covered by Article 98 of the UNCLOS. Definitions. There are many different definitions of search and rescue, depending on the agency involved. Canadian Forces search and rescue comprises the search for, and provision of aid to, persons, ships or other craft which are, or are feared to be, in distress or imminent danger. United States Coast Guard. The use of available resources to assist persons or property in potential or actual distress. United States Defense Department. A search is an operation normally coordinated by a rescue coordination center or rescue subcenter, using available personnel and facilities to locate persons in distress, and rescue is an operation to retrieve persons in distress, provide for their initial medical or other needs, and deliver them to a place of safety. History. One of the world's earliest well-documented SAR efforts ensued following the 1656 wreck of the Dutch merchant ship Virgil Drake off the west coast of Australia. Survivors sent for help, and in response 3 separate SAR missions were conducted, without success. On 29 November 1945, a Sikorsky R-5 performed the first civilian helicopter rescue operation in history, with Sikorsky's chief pilot Dmitry "Jimmy" Viner in the cockpit, using an experimental hoist developed jointly by Sikorsky and Breeze. All 5 crew members of an oil barge, which had run aground on Penfield Reef, were saved before the barge sank. In 1983, Korean Airlines Flight 007 with 269 occupants was shot down by a Soviet aircraft near Sakhalin. The Soviets sent SAR helicopters and boats to Soviet waters, while a search and rescue operation was initiated by US, South Korean, and Japanese ships and aircraft in international waters, but no survivors were found. In July 2009, Air France Flight 447 was lost in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. An international SAR effort was launched, to no avail. A third effort nearly 2 years later discovered the crash site and recovered the black boxes. In early 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 crashed under mysterious circumstances. Many nations contributed to the initial SAR effort, which was fruitless. In June 2014, the Australian Transport Safety Bureau commissioned the MV Fugro Equator to lead a 3-month survey of the ocean bed, for which it had budgeted $60 Minnesota. At the same time, Malaysia announced it had spent $9.30 Minnesota to date on fuel and food in its own effort. The search for Flight 370 has become the largest SAR so far, with the largest budget. Types of search and rescue. Mountain rescue. Mountain rescue relates to search and rescue operations specifically in rugged and mountainous terrain. Ground search and rescue. Ground search and rescue is the search for persons who are lost or in distress on land or inland waterways, traditionally associated with wilderness zones. Ground search and rescue services are increasingly required in urban and suburban areas to locate persons with Alzheimer's disease, autism, dementia, or other conditions that lead to wandering behavior. Ground search and rescue missions that occur in urban areas should not be confused with urban SAR, which in many jurisdictions refers to the location and extraction of people from collapsed buildings or other entrapments. Some ground search teams also employ search and rescue dogs. Urban search and rescue. Urban search and rescue, also referred to as heavy urban search and rescue, is the location and rescue of persons from collapsed buildings or other urban and industrial entrapments. Due to the specialized nature of the work, most teams are multidisciplinary and include personnel from police, fire and emergency medical services. Unlike traditional ground search and rescue workers, most US&R responders also have basic training in structural collapse and the dangers associated with live electrical wires, broken natural gas lines and other hazards. While earthquakes have traditionally been the cause of US&R operations, terrorist attacks and extreme weather such as tornadoes and hurricanes have also resulted in the deployment of these resources. Combat search and rescue. Combat search and rescue is search and rescue operations that are carried out during war that are within or near combat zones. Air-sea rescue. Air-sea rescue refers to the combined use of aircraft and surface vessels to search for and recover survivors of aircraft downed at sea as well as sailors and passengers of sea vessels in distress. International divisions of search and rescue responsibility. United Nations. The Geneva Convention on the High Seas, aka UNCLOSI, is an international treaty created in 1958 to codify the rules of international law relating to the high seas, otherwise known as international waters, and is one of 4 treaties created at the United Nations Conference on the Law of the Sea. This treaty contains the definition of high seas, at Article 1. International Search and Rescue Advisory Group is a UN organization that promotes the exchange of information between national urban search and rescue organizations. International waters. International waters are divided by the IMO's Maritime Safety Committee into 13 regions as an addendum to the SOLAS Convention. These regions were subdivided by various later conventions. The International Convention on Maritime Search and Rescue was signed in 1979, entered into force in July 1985, and governs SAR operations to present day. In the Arctic, SAR responsibilities are since May 2011 governed by the Arctic Search and Rescue Agreement. The duty to render assistance is covered by Article 98 of the UNCLOS. Every state shall require the master of a ship flying its flag, insofar as he can do so without serious danger to the ship, the crew or the passengers, to render assistance to any person found at sea in danger of being lost, to proceed with all possible speed to the rescue of persons in distress, if informed of their need of assistance, insofar as such action may reasonably be expected of him. After a collision, to render assistance to the other ship, its crew and its passengers and, where possible, to inform the other ship of the name of his own ship, its port of registry and the nearest port at which it will call. A ship should not be subject to undue delay, financial burden or other related difficulties after assisting persons at sea. Therefore, coastal states should relieve the ship as soon as practicable. International casualty inquiries. The Load Lines Convention requires the investigation of casualties, and, under SOLAS Regulation I-21 and MARPOL Articles 8 and 12, each administration undertakes, when it judges that such an investigation may assist in determining what changes in the present regulations might be desirable, to conduct an investigation into any casualty occurring to ships under its flag subject to those conventions, and to supply the organization with pertinent information concerning the findings of such investigations. Under Article 94 of the UNCLOS, paragraph 7 on duties of one flag state with respect to another, reads as follows. Each state shall cause an inquiry to be held by or before a suitably qualified person or persons into every marine casualty or incident of navigation on the high seas involving a ship flying its flag and causing loss of life or serious injury to nationals of another state or serious damage to ships or installations of another state or to the marine environment. The flag state and the other state shall cooperate in the conduct of any inquiry held by that other state into ever such marine casualty or incident of navigation. International Maritime Organization Resolution MSC 255 of 16 May 2008 adopts the Code of the International Standards and Recommended Practices for a Safety Investigation into a Marine Casualty or Marine Incident. It is also known as the Casualty Investigation Code. It is meant to govern collaborative investigations into very serious casualties, which are defined at paragraph 2.22 as a marine casualty involving the total loss of the ship or a death or severe damage to the environment.